I want to jump right in to some Raiders versus Patriots with Mike. Mike, can you tell us what went on in the game? And first off, who won that game?
The Raiders.
The 3-3 Raiders.
Yeah, the 3-3, 500 Raiders. Yes, they won. I mean, it's what we expected. I can't help but think, and even especially after seeing this game, I think the Patriots might secretly be the worst team in football. Like, I know the Panthers are playing pretty bad, but I mean, they got off to a hot start against the Dolphins. They went up 14-0, and they've battled in a couple of games that they've played. Whereas, I mean, the Patriots have won a game. I'm forgetting who they beat, but I don't know. As the season progresses, it just feels like they're the worst team in football. But they do have injuries. But Mac Jones just does not look good. And their offense as a whole, I mean, they can barely run the ball. I mean, there were moments in this game where they were running on the Raiders. Like Ezekiel Elliott had a huge play. I don't think it was a run. I think it was a pass, but it was a long, like 60-yard touchdown. They got brought back because of a holding penalty. And then they ended up rushing, I want to say, for 2 touchdowns on us. Both Zeke and Ramondre each got a touchdown, I want to say. But besides that, I mean, there were quite a few 3-and-outs forced on the Patriots offense by the Raiders defense. And the Patriots defense, like, that's what they've been known for. And they got stops on the Raiders, but it was usually when it wasn't Jimmy Garoppolo in the game anymore, which is probably the big thing to talk about. He has a back injury, or at least that's what it was designated as.
Yeah, but not from carrying the team, right?
No. I mean, the person that carried the team, at least scoring-wise, you know, relative to the title of our stream tonight, A Tale of Two Kickers, would be Daniel Carlson, who ended up scoring 4 field goals, 1 in each quarter. And then, additionally to the score, Jimmy Garoppolo threw a touchdown to Jacoby Myers in the second quarter. And then to end the game, Max Crosby and Adam Butler got a sack in the end zone on Mac Jones to finish it.
A safety, right?
Yeah. So it ended up being 21 to, I want to say 17. Obviously, the Raiders won. A couple stats just to throw out there. Again, I'm not going to take a long time. Just starting with Michael Mayer. Like last week, I came into our pod and I said, man, it finally looks like Michael Mayer is becoming a part of this offense. Like they're starting to progress him into a role. Well, if that was the beginning of it, I think this week was like, this is what it should be every week. 5 catches, 75 yards for Michael Mayer. And then just wait until he gets in the end zone. Like that's he looks like he's going to be really, really good. And I'm very excited about that. I'm a big fan of the tight end position. I know there are other people that for some reason don't like tight ends. I think the tight end position is kind of at least they can be the jack of all trades, you know, Swiss Army knife sort of player, a la like a, you know, George Kittle. And then, I mean, I know Juszczyk is a fullback, but he's kind of in the same vicinity for me, you know.
When I think of Swiss Army knives, I think of like Kyle Juszczyk, yeah.
Yeah.
But he's sort of like one of a kind because the NFL doesn't necessarily use fullbacks across the board like they used to.
Yeah, no, and they definitely don't use them like Juszczyk usually. I mean, the last fullback that I can remember playing like in a interesting, you know, multi-tool sort of way was Marcel Reese for the Raiders way back when. But yeah, Juszczyk is kind of on a different level. That's the difference between tight ends and fullbacks. Is usually tight ends aren't going to run the ball. But anyways, I think Michael Mayer, coming out of the draft, I felt like he could be somewhere in between. I'm not trying to say oh, he'll be one of the great tight ends of all time, but I could see him being somewhere in between Rob Gronkowski, a guy that I want to say McDaniels helped draft for the Patriots, and this is his offense and everything, and a Zach Miller, who, if you've watched this podcast long enough, is my all-time favorite player, or at least the player that made me a fan of football. So
I just real quick, I just have to cut you off. It's Michael Mayer has looked great through 2 games, and I think he's gonna really take off and be a great player. But I just find it funny how after two great games, you're immediately like, oh yeah, mentioning him in the same breath as Rob Gronkowski, like one of the greatest tight ends of all time.
Well, that's why I said somewhere in between.
Yeah.
As far as the career scale goes, Zach Miller wasn't an all-timer or nothing. I mean, he was good for a couple of years. I would think he's great, but when you look at the stats and everything, it's like people just go, "Oh, he was okay," but when you actually watched him on the football field, it was like, "No, that's a fucking football player," and somewhere between that statistically and Gronkowski, I'm thinking more like in the middle. So maybe, I mean, I'm hoping for a George Kittle, if I'm being honest. I would say that would be in between them, right? Maybe a little bit more towards the Gronkowski side, but I'd say Kittle hasn't been super consistent statistically, But when he gets hot, he's on fire.
Mayer strikes me as like a better blocking Foster Moreau.
Yeah, but the draft capital that they used on him and just the profile that he's built from college, and even apparently he was an absolute menace in high school, tells me this guy should be special.
Yeah, no, but I say it as a compliment.
Yeah,
he's been used like Foster Moreau. Like, he hasn't consistently been used so far. But I have to say, these past 2 weeks, Michael Mayer is on the sideline giving his best Mahomes impression. I'm here.
Yeah, I get
he's here.
I get the Foster Moreau comparison in the sense that so far in his career, he has been the number 2 tight end. But where my head is going is after this season, when Austin Hooper isn't on this team anymore, at least he probably shouldn't be, he will be the unparalleled. He will be the only tight end receiving catches, at least in a major degree, on this offense. And I just think the way that he's already trending upwards in a matter of now 6 weeks, but especially the past 2 weeks, he's gone from barely getting 1 target in a game to going from 3 targets to 5 targets. It feels like, and my prediction was around mid to late season, he'd become the number 1, the true number 1 tight end, and probably the 3rd target on the offense. It feels like that's coming,
Mm-hmm.
And when that does happen, he will already, no offense to Foster Moreau, he will already be above Foster Moreau.
Mm-hmm.
As far as the scale.
I don't think it is a tough feat to overcome Foster Moreau's legacy, on the Raiders. I don't think that's a tough hill to climb, and I'm pretty sure Michael Mayer is going to get there with ease. I'm just saying, through these first 6 weeks, the usage and everything, everything considered, reminds me of a better blocking Foster Moreau.
Yeah, no, actually, I thinking more about it, I agree, because I remember his Foster Moreau's rookie year. He looked like a stud when he would get the football in his hand, and then second to last game of the season, or at least in Oakland, against the Titans, he tore his ACL his rookie year, and that probably brought him down a little bit for a while. But obviously, he's been through worse, and he's still playing football at a pretty high level. So, all that to say, I think Michael Mayer is very much on his way to being, one
In
of
the
the
Hall of Fame.
guys. No, I'm not going to say that for a long time, but definitely one of the guys on this offense. Another one of those guys would be Josh Jacobs, 25 carries, 77 yards. That's probably the most carries he's gotten this season. And it makes sense because Brian Hoyer was in the game, and I think they had to rely on Jacobs. And it's a little upsetting that he couldn't get to 100 yards on 25 carries, but I like seeing 25 carries for Jacobs, based off of last season. I just need the efficiency to get better. I need the run blocking to get better, and I want to see a 100-yard game rushing from Josh Jacobs this season. It has to happen soon. In fact, next week is a good week for it to happen, but we'll get there. And then Brian Hoyer, he was 6 for 10 for 102 yards, and he had a 94.0 grade, QB grade. This is per ESPN. But the interesting stat from Hoyer, at least to me, is that he completed a 48-yard pass to Trey Tucker. I want to say it was like the third quarter. That is the longest play from scrimmage for this Raiders team this season, 48 yards. And for all I know, the next longest was like 32, like not like 46. Like it might have been a good chunk smaller. And that's been the Jimmy Garoppolo experience for me so far, is not any explosive plays, We had to wait for Brian Hoyer to finally get on the field to get an explosive play. That's kind of ridiculous.
I'm glad you mentioned that because I seem to remember a couple weeks ago when we were arguing which weapons were better for Garoppolo. The Niners' weapons that he had, in San Francisco, or the Raiders' weapons. And I think you could make the case that the Raiders' weapons are better for a quarterback who's going to utilize vertical threats. And for a quarterback like Jimmy Garoppolo, I made the case that these guys, you can throw them the ball at the line of scrimmage and they're going to break a bunch of tackles.
Yeah, I definitely get it. I just, I think Ayuk, I'm not saying Ayuk is the same as Jacoby Myers, but I think he's in the same, like, body type or like wide receiver type mold. Yeah. Like, he's not the type of receiver that's going to catch the ball, make one cut, and then run up 30 yards downfield. Occasionally, yes, but Debo's that guy, And then Devontae, he's not that guy, but he's the expert route runner and very good deep, pass catcher. I still think that the thing about the Raiders receivers, and this is Renfro included, is that they're one of the best route running trios in the league. And I felt that was good for Garoppolo because he's not good at throwing deep. But yes, it does limit Davante Adams to not having the same explosive plays that he had last season with Derek Carr. And that does suck. But that doesn't mean to me that the Niners receivers are better for Garoppolo. I think what it means to me is perhaps the Niners offense is better for Garoppolo. Because I can't in my right mind say that any group of receivers is better for a quarterback than a group of receivers including Davante Adams and honestly Jacoby Myers as the number 2. I think Jacoby Myers is on fucking fire. And he clearly fits this offense beautifully. And I think Davante Adams, allows him to get open more because all of the eyes are on Davante. And that was on display this past weekend because Davante, I think, only had 2 catches, whereas Jacoby Myers had like 5 for 61 yards and a touchdown. So
I'll say this. I will say that the Raiders' weapons are better for more advanced quarterbacks, whereas the 49ers weapons are definitely more geared towards quarterbacks who need training wheels a little bit, like not subpar, because Purdy's not subpar. Purdy's actually pretty damn good, and that's why the Niners offense is scoring 30 plus points per game.
That's why they're better with Purdy than Garoppolo.
Yes. But I'm saying, like, for a guy like Jimmy Garoppolo, he needs, yes, an offense sort of, like the Niner offense, like with training wheels. You know what I mean? Whereas I could definitely see you make the case that you wouldn't want anybody besides Devontae Adams and Jacoby Myers. I'm just saying, for the guy that you guys have right now, my guys are better.
Yeah.
For him.
Right.
For his skill set.
Yeah, and for the offense especially, for sure. You bring up a really good point, because I was listening to a podcast earlier, and I don't want to name them because they're a fantasy football podcast, and I don't want to give up my sources specifically for you.
Well, guess what? You're about to be 0-6 right now, Mike. So
that's correct.
You could give up your sources. It's not going to matter. I'm my only source.
Honestly, it really doesn't matter, because like I'll listen to like 3 or 4 fantasy podcasts throughout my day at work
and formulate your opinions, like just sort of gauging what they say, and you think about it.
I'm more interested in like certain stats that they might drop here and there, rather than like, oh, you need to pick up this guy. It's like, I want to hear you need to pick up this guy because blank, blank, blank. That's what I want to hear.
Mm-hmm.
But
you don't want to hear the oh yeah, it's time to drop all your fab on Amari DeMarcado,
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, dude,
James Conner just went down and Amari is ready to take over the backfield.
Well, that was the funny thing about that. I know this is a Cardinals thing, but
yeah,
all the fantasy football experts were saying like number 1 priority is Amari DeMarcado, however you say it. And then literally the next day I saw a tweet, somebody saying, well, first off, Keontae Ingram was out in that previous Cardinals game. And then like a day later, the Cardinals released a depth chart where Keontae Ingram was the starter.
He was the starter, and it ended up being a third guy.
Yeah, but by that time, people had already picked up DeMarcado for like hella fab or whatever, or their priority, and they got screwed. So I'm like, it's half the time it's a crapshoot. But point being, I'll say it. It's the Ringer Fantasy Football Show on it's a podcast. So I use Apple, and they're like pretty funny. So I just like listening to them. Kind of bullshit half the time, but they brought up this point about quarterbacks. For example, Mac Jones. Just a couple guys that they specifically said: Mac Jones, Desmond Ridder. I think they said Tua, and they might have mentioned Purdy as well. Actually, I know we're talking about the Raiders right now, but how exactly was Brock Purdy's interception? Was it like he just threw a bad pass? Maybe it slipped in the wetness of the rain, or was it deflected, or was it like off of receiver's hands?
If I remember correctly, I believe he was targeting Ayuk and threw it behind him, and it got picked. Let me look up the play. I tried to block that game out of my memory, but let me see. Or let me look on Twitter. I have to rewatch that, but all right. Purdy interception. I remember it being a bad throw. Let's see. I'm gonna go ahead and share screen, if you don't mind. Let's see, share screen.
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, this is from the NFL. Well, I think I clicked on somebody else's tweet, but the video is from the NFL's Twitter.
Purdy slings it, intercepted.
It's like behind Ayuk.
Yeah, I got dogs barking in the background here.
No,
but the point being, you have a lot of quarterbacks who are in these offenses that are essentially, the offensive coordinator is essentially telling them, hey, this is your first read, throw it here at this moment. Like count to 3 and throw the ball or whatever they tell them, right? Like you don't even need to read the rest of the field half the time because the offensive coordinator might be telling them like, hey, throw it here, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I noticed there was an interception by Mac Jones in this Raider game. Oh no, it wasn't an interception, but it was a Mac Jones, steps back, looks to his left and throws the ball. And I think it was Kendrick Bourne, like ran a really slow route. Like it was like he was delaying it. So he was supposed to like go up to and then like, cut, go in and then back out. And then he was going to catch the ball. When he cut in, the ball was already thrown to the out, So it was a miscommunication. But when you see the replay, it's like Mac Jones was looking at everything and he still threw it. Like, no questions asked. It's like it was as if it was practiced and timed, and this is when I'm supposed to throw it, and this is where I'm going to throw it. Please be there, And, there's another point made of like quarterbacks getting flagged for intentional grounding when they had a miscommunication with the receiver, right? So like we used to joke a lot about Derek Carr. He'd throw a pass up and to the right, and then the receiver would be going up and to the left, and then you'd see, and it'd be like on a third down as turnover, or they're about to punt, and you see Derek Carr running off the field, and he looks at the receiver, he's like, to the receiver, like, you're supposed to go this way, dude. It's like, on those, I think those are like option routes or whatever, but I guess my point is, at least what it seems like, is quarterbacks are being taught, hey, at least if they're not special quarterbacks, at least the way I take it, or this is just the coach, and this is no matter what the offensive coordinator or head coach, this is how they do it. Do not question it. Like say a Shanahan, right? And I think Shanahan is the best at this, but basically it seems like these coordinators are telling the quarterbacks, throw the ball here. This is your first read. Just do it at this moment in time.
Mm-hmm.
And like when I heard this on the podcast, I literally just thought of that Mac Jones pass, and I was like, that's what it looks like. It's like these quarterbacks are being taught essentially not to think. They're just being taught snap ball, look here, throw ball. And it doesn't matter what he sees, because apparently Desmond Ridder, he threw 3 interceptions, and at least 2 of them were like some of the worst interceptions ever seen. Like just blatant, like double coverage. Both of the corners or defensive backs were in front of the receiver, but he still threw the ball. Like, what are you doing? Right. So it's interesting to me. Like, why would a quarterback do that other than freaking out because he's getting pressure, which I don't think Mac Jones was on that play. Or because they're being taught, I don't care, you throw it here. Like you and I talked about on the podcast, I want to say, there was a play, maybe it was Jimmy Garoppolo, I don't remember, where Shanahan got pissed off because the quarterback didn't go to the first read.
It was Nick Mullins.
Okay. Didn't go to the first read, threw it somewhere else, and was it completed?
It was completed, I believe. It was like I want to say it was a wheel route, or he was supposed to throw the wheel route, and then Kyle Shanahan chewed him out on the headset. And then Mike McDaniel, after like there was some silence, chimed in like, hey, but isn't it good that he didn't throw it there because
he was covered up or something.
Yeah, the ball would have been picked, or like something along those lines.
Yeah. So I guess what I'm trying to get at here is, isn't that weird that coaches are like that? That coaches are like, I don't care how bad it makes you look, I want you to throw it here. Because like a guy like Desmond Ridder, or let's say this is happening to Mac Jones right now, where like they're actually better quarterbacks, but they have to do what their coordinator says or they will get benched. But if they do what their coordinator says and they go out there and throw 2 picks, or like Desmond Ridder, 3 picks, and then by the end of the season they're getting benched anyways, it's like there's no winning, if that's the case. Now in Brock Purdy's case, for one thing, I don't think Brock Purdy is always doing only the first read by Shanahan type of thing, but I think Shanahan does this quite a bit, and like I said, I think he's the best at this because his offense is so proficient. But it's just odd. And I guess the other thing that I'm getting at is the quarterback that I want. I don't want a quarterback and coach tandem that is coach telling quarterback what to do. I want the Patrick Mahomes, the Justin Herbert, the special quarterback that's
The
going
off
to go out there
schedule,
and
that's going to read the defense, is going to know where to go with the ball, is going to know, all right, I see the defender right there. I'm not going to be able to, I'm not going to be able to go there. I'm going to be able to have freedom to switch the play. Yeah, I want to see that shit. Like,
yeah, that's what I want.
I didn't have the pleasure of being born in time to witness Bill Walsh, but everything I hear is like that Bill Walsh would have have his quarterbacks and the whole offense. They would practice the same play, but practice different scenarios. Like, all right, this is what happens when they're in this coverage. This is what happens when Dwight Clark is covered. This is what happens when Dwight Clark slips. This is what happens when the fullbacks like they would. I mean, back then they were able to practice much more. But
Yeah.
I feel like nowadays you mentioned that a lot of coaches are like that. I feel like it's an ego thing where instead of having the quarterback prepared to see everything and having the quarterback learn, and be and play the position on the field, it's more like they want to play Madden, and it's like,
Yeah.
all right, I'm a genius and I know this is going to happen, and if you don't trust me, I'm going to put you on the bench. Like, that shit to me, it's kind of whack. I don't like
It's
that
weak.
shit.
It's trash, dude. Like,
Yeah.
you're I understand. I kind of get it for Shanahan because, at least from what it seems like, he's proven that it works. But also, like, you're not on the field doing it, so come on.
Has he
He doesn't have
proven
a
that it
ring.
works? Yeah.
No, he
Has
doesn't.
he?
But I mean, the teams that, or at least the offenses that he's put together, like he put together an MVP season for Matt Ryan. And I think Matt Ryan at the time was a guy that was making his own decisions, but I'm sure there were a lot of plays where it was go to the first read, And granted, in that offense at the time, I want to say it would be pretty easy because the first read would either be Julio Jones, I want to say Roddy White, or fucking Hall of Famer Tony Gonzalez. So it's not too bad, And then the same for this offense with the Niners. Now it's Debo, Ayuk, Kittle, or McCaffrey. So I just obviously it's going to be successful. Maybe not with a ring, but it is successful for him. But yeah,
Mhm.
I guess my whole point there is just I want the Raiders to get a quarterback that doesn't have to, be told what to do. I
Doesn't
don't
have
want
to have
that.
the offense catered to him. You want a quarterback that's going to be able to carry and carry the offense.
Yeah, I want a difference maker. That's what I've been wanting, and that's why
Mhm.
I don't mind losing, because I want them to lose enough to get that guy.
Mhm.
And I know that to some people that might be like, "Oh, that's loser mentality," but it's like, well, as long as we have dipshit quarterbacks, we're going to be losing, or we're not going to be winning enough games to win the games that you want to win, which are playoff games.
Or as long as you don't have a serious quarterback, you're not going to be a serious contender.
Yeah,
And that's really what it's all about. But let's get back to recapping the Raiders versus Patriots, because we went on our little tangent, as we always do. We both predicted that the Raiders were going to win. So we both get green there. And I'm going to go ahead and update this. So K6. Okay. So now we can add K8. Okay. Yep. And then I can add L8. So, Mike, you are currently 3 out of 6 on your predictions with the Raiders. I'm currently 4 out of 6. Or 4 of 6, however you want to word it. Do you have any last thoughts about the Raiders versus Patriots before we move on to the Bears game?
My last thought is, once again, the defense did what it needed to do, and then some, at least this one time against the Patriots, which, again, I think that's because of how bad the Patriots are. But granted, I mean, I started the Raiders defense in 2 fantasy leagues, and I felt good about it, especially afterwards. So that's nice. And then really my last thought is, I need to see a lot more from this offense. And Michael Mayer is like a glimmer of hope, but I need to see Josh Jacobs rushing for 100 yards. I need to see at least one of the top 2 receivers getting 100 yards and a touchdown, you know. I want to see like at least 250 passing yards plus a 100-yard rusher, you know. I want to see a game where we don't give up sacks. I want to, you know, they might not have given up a sack in this past game, but, you know, against a competitive team, right? But my last thought is just I want to see more from the offense. And I know this is kind of getting into next week, but there are questions about who's going to be at quarterback.